good evening, wherever you are. My name is Francis Guestière. Someone needs to mute, probably Nelly. My name is Francis Guestière. I'm the practice manager for the Urban and Disaster Risk Management practice of the World Bank in the East Asia region. It's my privilege to welcome everyone to the 17th edition of Cities on the Front Line. Today's session will explore the role of metropolitan agencies in the response to the COVID-19. It is Lauren who will be introducing our speakers, so I have the honor of reminding everyone of the intention of this speaker series and the ground rule for the conversation today. The purpose of these global webinars is to have an open and honest learning conversation between practitioners in cities and government and partners supporting those entities. The calls are not on the record, and we ask that you do not attribute any comments made today or question asked to the speakers unless the material are made available after the call or you have the person's express permission to do so, and we will help you to obtain this permission if needed. We're thrilled at the response to this webinar. I think we have close to 300 participants for the call globally. To facilitate this discussion and as a matter of practicality, given the high number of participants, we ask that you use the Q&A function to ask any questions. Please note that the recording of this session, as well as the PowerPoint and the material, will be posted online, I believe, starting next Monday. I believe we'll have a very interesting session. Lauren, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Francis, and thanks to everyone who's joining us this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce a close collaborator of ours to start off the conversation tonight. Octavi de la Varga Mas is currently the Secretary General of Metropolis, and he was previously the Executive Director of Metropolis and has also worked with the city of Barcelona in the Provincial Council, as well as with Oxfam in several different positions. He's also a trainer of trainers, certified by the Observatory of the Decentralized Cooperation EU Latin America Group. So without further ado, I'm really happy to give the floor to Octavi.
Thank you, Laureen. First of all, I would like to thank the Global Resilient Cities Network and the World Bank Group to invite Metropolis to join this coronavirus speaker series, and especially in particular on this matter, the metropolitan approach to COVID recovery. And I like the title because the title says when municipal frontiers don't matter. And in fact, 3 years ago, when with the former 100 Resilient Cities, we worked together. We have a collection in Metropolis, which is called Issue Papers. It's a collection of policy documents with the state of the art of a given situation, some benchmarking, and then some key recommendations to develop this policy area. And almost 3 years ago, together with the former 100 cities, we worked on an issue paper which was called the Metropolitan Scale of Resilience. I'm happy that now with Global Resilient Cities Network, we are continuing working on this approach, working together on looking of the importance of the metropolitan dimension when we're talking about resilience. In fact, for Metropolis, as for those who don't know Metropolis, the World Association of Metropolitan Areas and Major Cities, with 138 members around the world, our core, if I may call it like that, business is metropolitan governance. And we say that regardless of existing institutional framework, a legalized metropolitan area, in many places around the world, the metropolitan reality exists. Sometimes it's being accepted by all the different levels of government. Sometimes this reality is not accepted. But the point is that on everyday life of people, they are confronted to this reality. Well, in fact, the other way around. Citizens, they move around their metropolitan space without sometimes knowing that there are districts, that there are different municipalities, and that there are administrative boundaries. And they work in an area, they live in another area, they go to the hospital to another area, they go to markets to another area, and so and so. And I think when we realize the importance of metropolitan areas and the importance of having this metropolitan approach, I think is with resilience, especially when it happens crises and emergencies. And the COVID virus COVID-19 has shown us this reality, and has shown us as well the limitations of certain metropolitan approaches, of certain metropolitan institutions, but as well that we don't think in terms of a metropolitan territory. Issues around mobility, issues around access to food, issues even, of course, the disease. I mean, the disease, they don't know about administrative borders. And here as well, issues about as well environment and so on. So I suppose that today with Xavier Tiana and Mario Silva, we will explore how the metropolitan area of Barcelona has reacted to the situation, and as well how Guadalajara, and as well, of course, why they think, I suppose they will talk about that as well today, that the importance of having this metropolitan approach, that, as I've said, they don't know the cities, the territories, they don't know about borders, especially in areas where cities keep expanding. I can only mention something, and I will give the floor to the speakers because they are the ones who have to speak. Something that happened in Barcelona. All the governments were talking about working together at different levels of connecting, and the metropolitan area was not taken into account. And in fact, there is a line, a metro line, the red, for those who have been in Barcelona, is the red line, which goes across 3 municipalities. One municipality which is called Santa Coloma de Gramenet, the city of Barcelona, and another municipality which is called L'Hospitalet. What happened when the region decided to establish different phases and phasing out from the lockdown is that this metro line was passing through these 3 municipalities, which were in 3 different stages of the escalating the lockdown. But for citizens, they didn't care because they moved from one station to another when they take the underground, and they don't know they're moving from one municipality to another. So if this happens to mobility, imagine the problems that turns up when we are talking about resilience and developing a resilience strategy with a metropolitan approach, which is not only an approach that needs to be taken by the metropolitan areas, it needs to be taken by all the actors in this metropolitan space. And for those we have, as I said, we have Mario Ramon Silva Rodriguez, who has a degree in international relations from the Institute of Technology and Higher Education of the West, a master in government and state and municipal public administration from the Jalisco College, and a doctorate degree in education. He's been a member of the Metropolitan Platform of Sustainability and the Assembly for Metropolitan Governance, as well as being participant of the Commission for Metropolitan Coordination in Guadalajara, and he has been responsible for construction and drafting of the Metropolitan Coordination Statute of Guadalajara. He's been also working as consultant for UN Habitat, and as well, he was the first technical secretary of the Metropolitan Areas Network of Americas, and as well, he's been director of mobility and transport in Guadalajara, and right now, he's the general director of the Institute for Planning and Development Management of the Metropolitan Area of Guadalajara. So as you see, IMEPLAN. So he see Mario Ramon Silva Rodriguez, he has a sound knowledge of metropolitan areas and the problems that metropolitan areas are facing. And as well, we have Xavier Tiana, who is not only speaker, but he's an old friend and colleague of me. So it's a pleasure to introduce him. He's currently the International Relations Director of the Metropolitan Area of Barcelona. He has been as well Secretary General of MedCities, a network of more than 60 cities and metropolitan areas in the Mediterranean region, and has been having other positions in the Barcelona Provincial Council, Head of European Office. He has quite an expertise in networking, in local governments, in public policy, and as well in metropolitan governance. He has a postgraduate diploma in local government, a master in European studies, and a bachelor in political science and international relations. So, as you see, we have 2 experts that they know the reality of metropolitan areas, but they don't only know this reality, they work on everyday basis within this reality. So, with anything else to say right now, I give the floor. Maybe we start with Mario Ramon Silva, and then with Xavier. Thank you.
Thank you, Octavi, and well, thank you for everyone, especially the World Bank Group and also the Global Resilient Cities Network, for inviting me to share the experience of the metropolitan area of Guadalajara during this crisis related with COVID-19. And well, I particularly want to thank them to invite me to speak on this experience and share what we have been able to do in response to this crisis across jurisdictions and using a metropolitan framework that we have been using for almost 6 years now in Guadalajara, and that has worked very well in other contexts and has also helped us during the current pandemic. So, well, I would like to start with a little bit context about the metropolitan area of Guadalajara. The next, please. Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to tell you a little bit more about our metropolis, which is the second largest metropolis in Mexico. And we are integrated by 9 municipalities and inhabited by more than 5 million people. As you can expect in a metropolis of this size, the expansion and the spreading of the virus has been a challenge for all the actors. And most of the attention of the whole state of Jalisco has been in this metropolis, since it encompasses more than the 62% of the state's population. As of now, we have 9,634 confirmed accumulated cases of the virus in the metropolis, and with 662 unfortunate deaths. And also, out of 12,231 in the state of Jalisco and 23,389 in Mexico. So this is a little bit about the context. And well, in the municipal level, where we have 9 municipal authorities coupled with the state and the federal authority, all with certain jurisdictions when it comes to public health and so many other areas. You can imagine the challenge and obviously the problems it is to ensure an effective flow of information and resources, as well as to coordinate decision-making during a crisis. So in this context, what we are doing with this metropolitan framework, well, next one, please. Here in Guadalajara, since 2014, we have a metropolitan coordination institutions that have allowed us to face this sort of challenge in the past, and the global pandemic has been no exception. The main executive institution of this model is the Metropolitan Coordination Board, as you can see on the image, which, well, it's composed by several key authorities with the participation of the federal level, the state level, the municipal level, also the Citizen Metropolitan Council representing the civil society, and also the local congress, and finally IMEPLAN. Among them, well, in this scheme participates also the governor and the main mayors of the metropolis. And well, this is the ultimately group that decides all the public policies and coordinated actions in Guadalajara. So to give just an example of the sort of things that happen in this board, during the last session of the board, the Metropolitan Citizens Council made a statement about the pandemic, which includes topics like public health, new strategies related with urban mobility, public safety, and also the economic support for the poor people around the metropolis. Well, this is an example that we are working now with this board. The next one, please. Well, now I would like to talking a little bit more about the metropolitan actions that will possible in this metropolitan framework. As part of the all metropolitan coordination activities, we have several working tables that revolve around certain topics such as environmental, urban mobility, risk management, environmental planning, urban planning, and so on. Within the mobility working table, a plan was introduced to expanding cycle infrastructure in response to the pandemic and also in order to provide safe mobility alternatives to our citizens, Some of this infrastructure may be temporary and some more may stay beyond the pandemic. The proposal was made by the Guadalajara and the Zapopan city government, and the representative of the 9 municipalities backed the initiative, which includes more than 17 kilometers of new bike infrastructure. Actually, we have almost 200 kilometers of bike lines in whole Metropolis. So this new infrastructure is part of this strategy to respond COVID-19. However, this is not just an immediate response, since the working table also approved the criteria for its implementation, which includes the infrastructure needs to be built along primary ways with the metropolitan connections through the length of the municipality. It needs to include junctions to public transportation routes. It needs to be connected to current bikeways so that the coverage of this type of infrastructure is expanded exponentially. And it needs to be built around a strategic trip generation and trip attracting points, taking into account the concentration of jobs and urban equipment also. Next one, please. Well, now I want to talk about our new element in this metropolitan system called Metropolitan Agencies. As part of the Metropolitan Development System, we also have these agencies that are the logistical and operational part of the metropolitan coordination, since they are in charge of delivering high-quality public services to all the citizens of the metropolis, regardless of what municipalities they are in. As of right now, we have 3 metropolitan agencies up and running, since these are relatively new models, which are the Metropolitan Police, the Metropolitan Agency for Mobility, Infrastructure and Services, and finally the Metropolitan Agency of Urban Forest. These agencies have been very active during the pandemic, ensuring that they play their part in reducing the spread of the virus. Particularly in this slide, you can see the Metropolitan Agency for Mobility and Infrastructure and Services has established strict protocols to ensure the safety and security of its users in the public way system, as well as of its workers. It has also done an important job in terms of data collection to monitor a part of the population's mobility using the public bike system. From this data collection, we can see that during the first 5 days of isolation, we saw a 61% reduction of trips and an 89% reduction in the registration of new users. On average, during the period of social isolation, which for us lasted almost 2 months, we saw a 58% reduction in trips and 77% reduction of the registration of new users. So, well, for us, this is a key part of what a metropolitan institution can do during a situation such as this, which is to strengthen data collection and flow in order to empower decision makers to take sensible, smart, data-driven decisions. Well, now, next one, I want to talk about the second metropolitan agency, the Metropolitan Agency of Urban Forest. On the other hand, this agency has been more on the side of the reopening and recovery phase of the crisis during what we have begun to call the new normal. Since during the isolation phase, this agency pretty much just shut down all the urban forests and parks, unlike the mobility agency, which had to still operate the public bike system. These metropolitan agencies now focus on the safe reopening of parks, which started earlier this week on June 29 with all the following protocols in place. First one, sanitary measures being implemented in the personnel and visitors of any park, among them the mandatory use of face masks. Second one, sanitary filters being placed in the access to all parks and within them. Tier 1, drinking fountains, gyms, and playgrounds to be remaining closed. And finally, a special control and disposal of sanitary waste. So this is the case of our Agency of Urban Forest. Next one. And now I want to talk about the Metropolitan Toolkit for decision making, because I think it's important to share information, and in this situation is where the needs of have more data planning instruments is more evident. As I said, a lot of the efforts that we have been doing related to the gathering and analysis of data in order to ensure that the city is prepared for situations such as the one we are currently facing. In this scenario, I would like to highlight the recently approved climate risk analysis of the Metropolis as part of the technical assistance we received from C40 to develop the Metropolitan Climate Action Plan. This diagnostic provides baseline evidence about the causes of global warming and our vulnerability to climate risk in the metropolis. This analysis includes 3 key studies. The first one is the inventory of greenhouse gases in the metropolis. The second one is the future projection of emission stages and greenhouse gas reductions for a carbon neutral metropolis in 25. And finally, the climate risk and adaptability in the metropolis. As Ivan said before, the metropolitan governance system that we have is a starting point for the flow of information, resources, and the decision-making abilities. But at the secondary level, I will point to the necessity of increasing our adaptability and resilience with the development of analysis such as this one. In the same train of thoughts, I will also point the Metropolitan Information System called SIGMetro in Spanish. SIGMetro is an open data platform, you can see SIGMetro in this slide, that houses information from the 9 municipalities within the metropolis, as well as general cartographies that relate to the planning processes in our city. This information is the result of the integration made possible by IMPLAN, the 9 municipalities, and also the Jalisco's government. Once again, it is through efforts such as this that the Metropolitan Coordination Institution can and have been able to help during crisis situations such as this one. And it is also how we can aid to the recovery process by increasing the resilience of our cities in order to be prepared for similar future situations. Next one, please. And now I want to talk about the actions in the level of the state level, in this case, the government of Jalisco. I would like to focus briefly on some of the broader action of the state government that are intrinsically related to the work we have been doing and are examples of how the lessons learned during this period can aid in our preparation for future crises. For instance, you can see in the image, together with the University of Guadalajara, the state of Jalisco developed an epidemiological detection system called Radar Jalisco. In contrast with the National Centinela model, which is passive, this Radar Jalisco allows us to no longer wait for the patients to come to health institutions. This is an important example to cooperate with the university and also the information management to help situations related with public health. The next one, please. Also, we have the Jalisco's Economic Recovery Plan, and this is integrated by 5 key strategies. The first one is the budget balance, with the idea to restructuring of the budget and efficiency in public expenditures. Also, the development of economic programs with the idea to have a gradual reopening of productive sectors in the state, the strategic economic detonators, with the idea to have the prioritized sectors for the economic recovery. Financing, well, in that case, we developed different programs and plans to support smart enterprises and people that work by themselves. And finally, monitoring and evaluation system with the idea to identify the progress to this strategy to reopen the economic activity in the whole state. The next one, please. Jalisco's economic recovery plan also includes phase 0. In this phase, the social distancing is important and it's mandatory, and the use of masks in public spaces remain, and monitoring of the sanitary situation and how it evolves in 3 key indicators. First one, sufficiency of hospital capacity. We developed a plan, a smart strategy to rebuild some old hospitals in new hospitals to receive patients with COVID-19. The second indicator is the rhythm of infections, and the final indicator is behavior of intra-urban and regional mobility. The phase includes several public policies that are adaptable of the changing of the indicators above, and phase 0 only concludes when the indicators advance in a positive fashion. And well, the next one, please. One of the key elements of the state strategy is the public transportation sector. In that case, we developed 3 important strategies. The first one is the preventive actions, as all of the cities in the world or around the world put on importance to have preventive actions to sanitize and disinfect those units and all the elements in the public transportation sector. But I would like to focus my comments in the Medical Connection Routes program. This is a free, safe, and exclusive public transportation service to medical personnel who work in private and public sector or institutions, and the routes also have information related to mental health attention. Up of the month of June, the program operates with 6 routes in the Metropolis, and a lot of trips around the Metropolis have been made. And finally, the private sector staggering of opening times as a measure to about crowds in the high demand public transportation routes. Each sector of the economy has a different opening time, which have been reinforced gradually with more units. We have 4,500 operations currently, and well, they made adjustments in their courses and supervision of their frequencies. Each sector has a different opening time, and well, this is a big challenge for us in order to have more control in terms of the COVID-19 in the Metropolis. Well, finally, the case of the municipalities, the next one, please. As you can see on the slide, all the 9 municipalities in the Metropolis develop strategies related with incomes, because poverty and low incomes are a big challenge in our Metropolis. And during this crisis, obviously, the connection with the public health problem with the low incomes, well, the final result is very complicated. So in that case, all the municipalities into this metropolitan framework develop and coordinate the same public policy to support people with low incomes. You can see some examples. For instance, the municipality of El Salto is one of the, a lot of people with low incomes, or the municipality of Zapotlanejo. This is an important cluster of clothes and fashion clothes in the all west region in Mexico, and they develop some strategies to support small enterprises. And well, this is economical strategy or economic phase of this strategy in the metropolis and in the municipal level. Well, next one, please. Finally, as a way to conclude my presentation, I would like to say that, of course, this crisis and unexpected situation have taught us several things, but I think they all point to the strengthening of what we have already been doing in Guadalajara in terms of metropolitan coordination. The possibility to talk amongst, coordinate, and collaborate across actors and authorities can only aid in the response to an emergency situation such as the one we are facing currently. This means that we need to explore new sectors such as public health, in which this needs to be the case. A common theme here in Guadalajara is that the citizens ultimately care very little as to what authority is solving their problems, as long as they are solved. So we have a great opportunity to ensure that this idea transcends, so that we can work together across jurisdictions in meeting the challenges our cities are facing now. Well, this is our experience, and well, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mario. Comes to Xavier then.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. This is a global webinar, so with different time schedules. And as Mario has said, I would like to thank the Global Resilient Cities Network, the World Bank Group, and also Metropolis, which is our global network, with a strong cooperation, for inviting us to take part in this webinar. Well, first of all, I would like to say that, as probably you know, Spain has been one of the most hit countries for COVID-19. Just some figures to remember you that almost 250 cases were 250,000 cases were diagnosed. Spain had yesterday 28 and 355 deaths, and a city like Barcelona, which is the second city after Madrid, which is not the city, the capital of the state, we had a suspected cases of 100 and almost 60,000 cases suspected having COVID, 35,000 diagnostic in the metropolitan area, and in our state, which is called Catalonia, like in Guadalajara, it's Jalisco, in our case, it's Catalonia, we had 12,556 deaths, most of them concentrated in the area of Barcelona. So, as you can imagine, this has been a real challenge, a threat for us. First of all, I would like to say, before going to my presentation, that the metropolitan area of Barcelona, which is a local government in our system, is the only metropolitan area existing in Spain with our own legislation. Is a level of government, like many other governments, which were not prepared for that. So we are not prepared. We didn't have neither a contingency plan nor an emergency plan to tackle this. So from night to day or from day to night, we need to stay home, working from there. Our plenary sessions were only scheduled to take part live, not virtually. So we need to change many things that we were not prepared for. I'm trying to share the presentation if it's working. One moment. Yes. Can you see it? Well, I think so. Well, this is the territory of the metropolitan area of Barcelona. Is a territory of 636 square kilometers, having 36 municipalities on it. Barcelona is the main capital, and as I was saying, is a local government. Is a local government with no legislation. It's a law from 2010. But here we have a strong tradition of cooperation of these municipalities, a tradition that is coming from the end of the 70s and so on. We had 3 different agencies, and these agencies merged in a single metropolitan area. As you can see, well, the region, the state, concentrates 7.6 million inhabitants, and half of this population is living in the metropolitan area of Barcelona. The metropolitan area of Barcelona is concentrating 10% of the Spanish GDP, 52% of the GDP of the state. Many companies, universities are concentrated there. You can see from this map there are different levels of municipalities. For sure, we have Barcelona, which owns the leadership of this metropolitan area, but there are also other realities of medium and small-sized municipalities. So, as I was saying, this crisis had a strong effect on us. So right now, one of the things that we are suffering is that we will have a strong budgetary cut. So our budget for 2020 will probably be cut in a 15 or 20%. So we will need to do the same or even more with less funding. So which is a threat, and we are really worried on how these financial issues will have an effect in our future. So the metropolitan area of Barcelona, as I was saying, is a local government. It's a local government of indirect election. That means that every 4 years after the local elections, the city or municipal mayors and other city councillors are appointed to the metropolitan area of Barcelona. That means that we are an administration which is working in a system of indirect election. That means that after the local elections taking place every 4 years, mayors and city councillors are appointed to be part of the metropolitan area of Barcelona. That means that every single municipality, despite the size they have, of the 36, they have representation in the metropolitan area of Barcelona. The 36 mayors choose the president. The president right now is the mayor of Barcelona, Mrs. Ada Colau. So our law is written in a way that Barcelona has a strong power in the institution, but the institution is delivering specific services for these 36 municipalities. Specific services that go from the spatial planning and housing to transport and mobility, waste and water management, strategic planning, social and economic development, and for sure where I'm working in international relations. I would like to focus my speech in some of these cases. How did you tackle some of these cases? One of them has been explained by Mario, the issue of transport and mobility, but I will try to give you a different perspective from that. Sorry that this slide is written in Catalan, my mother language, but if you see the numbers, this is the use that we were having of transport during the peak hour, the peak days of lockdown. That means between March 2020 and mid-April 2020. As you can see, and in green, we have the average of the transport. In black, we have the use of metro, the underground. In yellow, we have the bus. The bus is acting or operating outside Barcelona. And in red, we have the buses acting in the city of Barcelona with our public company, which is called TMB. As you can see, the use of public transport was in some cases below 10% in the main period of the lockdown. In terms of offer, we were offering 90%, or we were offering 90% less of the normal use in daily transport and 95% of the normal use in night transport. So that means that we had to stop some of the offer in terms of transport. I have to say that today, transport service has been recovered 100%. The data that we are using, you cannot see them here in the slide, but it's a use of 52% of the normal use. Several or specific services that we are providing, like the bus lane connecting the airport and the city, has been reopened. Same, The same with other specific lines have been reopened. The service, the taxi service, is working at the 60%. So day by day, we are coming to normality, but with, as you all know, with the lack of trust of citizens to use public transport. At the same time, another example on how the crisis hit Barcelona in this moment. Barcelona in January 2020 was opening or was creating a low emission zone of 95 kilometers. That means that here around this area in yellow, several types of cars were not allowed to drive. This is a very interesting project where we as metropolitan area, we are working for sure with the city of Barcelona, which is the most affected of this low emission zone, and four other metropolitan municipalities and the region. So there's a very good cooperation with this project. The question is that this low emission zone started in January 2020, and in April the 1st, we were starting the moment or the process of finding those cars not allowed to drive in certain types of hours to the zone. So we had to suspend this measure, a measure that has an effect in our air quality, which is not the best one. So now we took the decision to start this finding process of the low emission zone the 15th of September of this year, increasing the exemptions for certain types of cars, certain types of people, according to income and so on. But this is a metropolitan project that we are still going on. This is kind of fresh news for you. The Metropolitan Council, which is the main political board of the metropolitan area of Barcelona, adopted this Tuesday the agreement for a new metropolitan mobility, an agreement with 4 core topics and 23 axes. So that means that very fast, the metropolitan area of Barcelona, with the full agreement of the municipalities and other stakeholders, agreed a kind of guidelines or a kind of new strategy for the new mobility. I would like to say after COVID-19, but I would say in the framework of COVID-19, because we are really scared of what's going on during summer and after summertime. So this agreement has 4 main topics. The first one is an agreement for a metropolis with more bicycles and pedestrians. Here, as Mario was saying, we will create more than 70 kilometers of cycle paths. We will expand the pedestrian spaces with 43 connecting projects. We will extend the 30 kilometers hour zones onto the metropolitan municipalities. We will promote bike sharing. We will promote cyclo-logistic services and so on. The second one, which is the agreement for the recovery of the public transport, here we will execute 35 kilometers of more tactical bus. We are already introducing 100 double stops and 500 traffic light priority passes. So in order to allow a more expanded process on the way we are waiting transport, we will rearrange the bus network in the metropolitan area of Barcelona, and for sure we have to work in restoration of public trust and public confidence in the system of public transport. As I said before, the economic effect for the metropolitan area of Barcelona on this crisis is highly concentrated in the transport, because we need to pay for transport, and our public transport is in deficit. So if our users are not using it, we will need to allocate more public funding to this service. The third one is an agreement for a new mobility in the work environment, working with companies or other social actors, reinforcement of the environmental taxation measures, increase the proximity modes of transport, and so on. And the fourth one, which links with what I said on the low emission zone, is the Metropolitan Agreement to preserve a clean and healthy air. So restarting the low emission zone around Barcelona, this one of 95 kilometers, creating new low emission zone, subsidies for the renewal of commercial vehicles dedicated to employers and low-income people, promoting the electrification of the metropolitan fleet and the metropolitan mobility, and so on. Another example on what the metropolitan area is doing. So the metropolitan area of Barcelona is in charge, of waste treatment. So waste collection is a responsibility of the 36 municipalities in whatever system they want, public and private, but we are in charge of waste treatment. We have a special waste treatment plans. So in this moment of lockdown, there was, sorry again, because this part of the slide is in Catalan, but it's very easy to understand. In this moment of the lockdown, there was a reduction of a 24% on waste creation, on waste. In a city like Barcelona, that had as an effect in a 25%. Other metropolitan or other neighboring municipalities in the metropolitan area of Barcelona increased the generation of waste. That is because these are residential cities, so citizens were not commuting to the main city capital, so they were remaining home. So that in some municipalities there was an increase between 10 and 15%. So this reduction is obvious because there was less people working in the city. All restaurants and bars and hotels were closed. So there was a decrease in organic, a decrease in paper, in glass, in plastic. So that was an effect. So our waste treatment plants were working, I would say 100%, but we had to adapt some of our services. For instance, the manipulation of the gray container was not done in terms of security for our workers. We had to receive some waste coming from the health sector. The waste becoming to hospitals and health sector increased up to 300% in this moment. So our waste treatment plants, which were not prepared for that, had to treat health waste, a very specific health waste, not the most dangerous, but we had to deal with that. So that was one of the main issues we had to answer. Another example, having a strong effect in the way we are working, public space. The way we know, the way we think, the way we are going to work public space in the future is going to change. We as Metropolitan Area of Barcelona, we are in charge, for instance, of the maintenance of 41 beaches in 42 kilometers of coastline. That's covering 8 municipalities. We have to close these beaches. We are increasing the sanitation measures of these beaches, the controls we are doing of the sand, of the water. Right now, people are allowed to be in the beach. We are Mediterranean, so now it's we have almost 30 degrees, so it's really warm, and our children are going to school, so they like this kind of free spaces, this notion of public space, but we need to control it. So we cannot allow people enjoying this public space in the same way. So here the work with the municipalities is very, very important. The same with our urban parks. We have a network of 51 urban parks. They have to be closed. They were sanitated, so they are open again. So people are enjoying this public parks again, or this public space again. Lockdown has been very strong for many families having small apartments with no open air in some of them. So there is a need for the use of this public space. And finally, in public works, the same. We had to stop around 40 public works that we were having, going from housing to municipal facilities. We had to stop these public works for a period of 1 month. So we reopened that. So well, I cannot control my time, so I'm thinking that I'm almost doing. Octavi, do I have some additional minutes?
I think we are questions and answers.
Okay, just one minute. If you allow me, some reflections from this process. As I was saying, we are not prepared for that. We need to be prepared in the future. we as metropolitan areas, we need, I would say, a bigger common voice. We have 36 municipalities, 36 mayors, so we need to act in a more shared voice, as we did, for instance, with beaches, sharing the time we can open the beaches and so on. So more metropolitan view and leadership on that. And something that I think we should consider in the future is taking into consideration some powers that were not belonging to our institutions. For instance, health, security, education. This is something that is not out of our responsibility, but health, education, public security has an effect on the way we work and on the way we provide our role. And thank you very much for your attention and for your time.
Thank you, Xavier, and thank you also, Mario, for your presentation. Oh, I think we have an echo. Okay, thank you. And we're going to move to the question and answers now. We had a poll during the presentations as well. And one of the questions that we asked participants was, what are the other key issues that you see as most important to address at the metropolitan level? And we actually had a tie, a dead heat between affordable housing and climate change. And so as we open up this question and answer period, and in the spirit of really doing more with less, as you said, Javier, cities are very concerned, right, coming out of the COVID crisis, how they are going to implement all of these multiple priorities with not just the same, but less budget than they anticipated. So in Guadalajara and in Barcelona, what are the key ways that you are seeing this crisis enabling people at the metropolitan level to work and achieve multiple benefits? And if you have examples specifically about housing and climate, please share those with our audience.
Well, in the case of the metropolitan area of Guadalajara, we present last May the first stage of the Metropolitan Climate Action Plan, and we include in that first step the diagnostic and the projections and the scenarios of the carbon neutrality in 2020. In 2050, sorry, and well, in that case, we have developed the final elements of this plan that we will present in October. That includes specific action in 3 key sectors: energy, transportation, and waste. So now we are developed the level of social inclusion, because in general terms, in this kind of plans, we all only focus on the environmental effects. But for us, it's important to think and develop strategies for include the social effects, particularly in communities with low incomes. So now we have this plan, and we will be the first metropolis in our country with this kind of plan that includes actions for the 9 municipalities and also for the state level. And in terms of housing, we have the table of housing policies. This table is a new element in our metropolitan development system, and we are making some strategies, and we are develop a diagnostic for what happened with housing during the pandemic. And well, we will present the diagnostic also in maybe between October and November, and we are trying to identify best practices in the municipal level. For instance, the municipality of Tlajomulco, they have a special program to support people for affordable housing, but in that case, the approach of the pandemic is not included because no one of us expect that this situation happen. So we are trying to identify these indicators and cross these indicators to know a little bit more what the pandemic affect in terms of housing in the metropolis.
Thank you, Lauren, for these questions. Well, for us, well, we have a climate plan 2030 that was adopted 2-3 years ago, if I'm not wrong. Our political mandate plan for the years 2019-2023 is absolutely green. In Europe, as you probably know, the European Union is facing the next round of the European multi-annual financial framework with an interesting and ambitious guidelines, which are the European Green Deal. So it's not because the European Union says that we have to go through the European Green Deal. It's that we need to go more green. And here I have to say that in terms of the European Union and taking into consideration these difficulties in the financial situation, the European Union has presented an ambitious financial plan for the multi-annual financial framework, which is the main budget for the European Union 2021-2027, allocating 750 billion additional euros coming from the markets, and they will go through very specific recovery and resilience fund, a new REACT fund, a fund helping the companies. But here's again the role of local governments. Normally, local governments are the last ones to have the possibility of sitting in the table. So this is a very regional aspect, but in terms of the European Union, these are decisions that were going to be taken at the national level. So here's very important for us to have an active role to see to what extent this funding can complement the future funding we can have. And in terms of housing, for sure, in terms of housing, this is also a priority for us. This is a big problem in not only in Barcelona, as in many other European and global cities. Barcelona metropolitan area is providing new housing, new renting. We have created a public and private company to create new housing. We will invest, well, let's see how the situation is going, but we will invest around 100 million euro to regenerate and to renew private housing coming from the 70s and the 80s in terms of energy efficiency. So we will, because these apartments that we were having from the 60s and the 70s were done in bad materials. So some of them didn't have a lift or neither an accession ramp for old people. So we will renew these apartments, these private apartments, with a focus on energy efficiency matters.
Thank you, Javier, and thank you, Mario, for a really interesting presentation. Moving on maybe to a more practical question, a question from Antonio Hill, who's asking to what extent have Guadalajara and Barcelona prioritized public communication in your response? How much of your work is about communicating the decision and how much is about trying to craft policy and to craft decision? And then a related question from Uri Reich, who's one of our experts on metropolitan management at the World Bank, which is who decides, who takes the decision on what action are being taken, both at the different levels. So maybe we can start again with Mario and then move to you, Javier.
Thank you, Francis. Well, in our case, trying to respond to the first question from Uri, as we said before in my presentation, we have this Metropolitan Coordination Board that it is integrated by the named mayors and the governor, and this board is actually the only space to communicate the decision taken by the mayors and also the governor in terms of the metropolitan issues. During the pandemic, this board has some sessions, public sessions. During these sessions, they present the final decisions, for instance, in terms of public health measures in parks and public spaces, the decisions to close theaters, cinema, malls, and so on, it was presented by the mayors and the governor together. So this is the space to decision-making process, and also this is the space to communicate all the decisions in terms of public communication. So this is the mechanism.
Yes, thank you, Francis. Well, in terms of communication, in our case, communication faced to the citizens were paying strong attention to what the ministry was saying and what the region was saying. Here I have to say that in the framework of this crisis, there was this was critical because there was some kind of recentralization. I mean, health powers, the health competencies are in charge of the regional government in Spain. So when the crisis started, the Spanish government took the decision to recentralize the main coordination of the sanitary response. That was very critical because in terms of proximity, our regions are the ones who are managing the health system. So that was critical. But I have to say that the main information was coming from the ministry and the region. There were daily press conferences, and all the organizations like ours, like the City Council of Barcelona and others, we were opening public spaces in our websites with online information. Social networks have been very useful for that. So I think the main source of information for citizens, because we are in lockdown, was television and seeing what the ministry and the region was saying. Going back to the question to decision making, as I said before, decision making in the metropolitan area of Barcelona is taken by the 36 municipalities. The 36 municipalities are in the board, in the political board. So in terms of decision making, Barcelona, which is the most populated city, has no bigger power than a small municipality of El Papiol or San Vicente dels Horts, which are placed there with some thousands of inhabitants. So it's a shared decision by our city mayors in the metropolitan area of Barcelona.
If you may allow say something on what you were asking, Lorena and Francis, what we have been witnessing in our membership is that many, and it seems obvious, but apparently it was not so obvious, that they have discovered that many of our members are working in silos. And then fighting the COVID, they have realized that the cross-cutting issues between different public policies, and the examples that Xavi was explaining about housing and old people, and also energy efficiency, but also adaptability, accessibility, but then the links between mobility and also social exclusion, and so on. So what we're witnessing is that they're starting internal dialogues to look on how we can work in a different way, at political level and at technical level too.
Octavi, I think that's a perfect way to start to bring this to a close, but also recognizing that the power of this crisis in some ways has been to focus efforts on working across those silos, achieving those multiple benefits and breaking down those barriers that the disease does not respect. Neither do climate impacts, neither do these metropolitan transport issues. I do want to say that Octavi and the team from Metropolis do have online a lot of resources about how to respond to COVID, including at the metropolitan scale. So this is a conversation that is ongoing, and you can continue to find more information about that on the Cities for Health site. So I think maybe we'll pop that link into the chat function. And I also want to, again, thank everyone for making the time to join us, your morning, afternoon, or night. And also to thank Octavi for joining us from Metropolis, and to Mario from Guadalajara and Xavier from Barcelona. Thank you for sharing with us. We will have, as a balance to this very strong male panel, we will have a very strong female panel joining us next week, when we will talk about gender inclusive strategies for recovery, so gender inclusive cities. And we will be joined next week by our Deputy Chief Resilience Officer from the city of Salvador, and also by the Resilient Honolulu team. So from our Resilient Ohana, from our Resilient family here, the World Bank and GRCN, speaker series, we just want to say so long to everybody. Have a safe and healthy week, and we hope to see you back here next week. And a big, I think, shout out and announcement for our Asia Pacific and our participants in the US and Latin America. Next week's series will actually be on Friday morning in Asia, Thursday evening in the US and Latin America. So it's a bit of a friendlier time for those of us in those two time zones. For our colleagues in Europe, we hope you'll wake up for us, and if not, the videos and the recordings are always available to you on our website. Again, thank you everyone for joining, and take care.